I want to welcome everyone to this webinar. We're planning to keep it under an hour, short and sweet, with a lot of good information contained within it. So this is a climate resilient farming in the Pacific. We have Ming here from Center for Getting Things Started, Livai Tora from Kokosiga Pacific, from PFON, and Kyle Stice and myself from Pacific Farm Organizations PFON. And I'd like to give it over. Let's start with Ming via some introductions.
Thank you, Bula, aloha, and various other Pacific-oriented greetings to all of those of you who have joined us. Thank you. I am zooming in from Moku Okiawe, which is the big island, Hawaii Island, where the volcano is. And most of my work in the Pacific region is with our youngest people, with teachers and students around educating for sustainability. So I'm very excited to be part of this webinar with Livai and Kyle, because one of the things that we identified collectively as PFON was working on the Breadfruit People strategic plan was how to bring our generations together, how to have intergenerational knowledge passed back and forth, how to support our young people to understand where their food comes from and to appreciate the land. So Ian and Kyle and Livai, very grateful for this opportunity to share some of the resources around climate resilient farming, but targeted towards children. Thank you, Ian. Do you want me to do my presentation, or are we going to go around and introduce?
Oh, let's go around real quick and then we'll come back.
Okay, good stuff. Do you want to?
Go for it, Livai.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks, Ming. Again, Livai Tora, based in Natalo Village in Sambeto, in Nandi. Farmer by profession. We co-authored these climate change resilient modules that we'll be talking about in the later stages of this webinar. I'm very interested in Ming Wei's the work that Ming Wei is doing in regards to children and kids that we really want to plant the seeds in their head while they're still young, and I think that's the only time they'll be able to adapt these principles. And you know, these kids, they're very creative minds, eh? And if you can plant them at a very young age, I'm sure it'll create a good and a better sustainable impact in the future. So thank you, Ming Wei, for the work that you're doing over on that end. Further on, we'll discuss the modules when my time comes on, but I'll be very quick. I just want to acknowledge our late lead author, Dr. Andrew McGregor, who actually compiled and got these documents finished. You know, it was just because of him that we were able to document all these important work that we've been doing here in Fiji and the Pacific. So just a small acknowledgement to Dr. Andrew McGregor. Thank you, Naka.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Livai and Ming Wei and Ian. My name is Kyle with Pacific Farm Organizations, and yeah, I can kind of feel the presence of Andrew here today, and he was really passionate that that these kind of training manuals and reports don't just sit on the bookshelf, but that they get out to the people that really need them. And I was so proud of the Pacific Agriculture Knowledge Management Fair about a month ago, which was bringing all of these cool resources that some of them have been sitting on the shelf. Some of them are being produced at the very local level, and just sharing them around so that farmers and people helping farmers have access to them. And it's so cool today that we can kind of spotlight or highlight some of these. And yeah, it's just great to kind of bring North and South together with Ming Wei you know, not only her work here in Hawaii, but across Micronesia, again, targeting, you know, school programs, young children, and connecting them up with food. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Kyle. Yeah, these resources are so great, and we're hoping they can get utilized, and we look forward to learning more about them today. I think first we're going to start out with Kyle sharing on these modules. If Kyle, you have a presentation you want to share?
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry, there we go. Oh, well, actually, that's okay. Let's let Mingwei go first, and then I'll present on the overview of the modules, and then Levi, if that's okay with you, Mingwei, starting with the younger generation, and then ours is talking a little bit about the older ones.
Wonderful. So thank you again to the team and fellow audience as you're listening in to what we're working with the children. And then Kyle and Levi are sharing about their modules. I really hope that you can make quick connections and associations so that there's ways to even take the modules that Dr. McGregor, Kyle, and Levi worked on and translate them or use them even for the younger ones. So if I may share my screen, I do have a slide deck. So dear ones, I dropped into the chat. I hope you can access. All these climate change readers are available for free downloads. And I will explain more about it, but the link to download them is in the chat. And the easiest way is to actually, because some of these books are quite large, is to just click on the language that you want and then download it. And then of course, I also dropped the link to the slideshow because I'm hoping that I'm seeing who's on the call. I see a lot of our family, and I'm really hoping this can be like a train the trainers. If these books seem valuable to you in your context, please feel free to use the slide deck and share about these readers everywhere. So again, so this is a climate change readers for the Pacific. And really our challenge was to teach children about climate change without using the word climate change. A lot of the materials are out there, scare the children, just like from this page. So in one of the books, a scientist came to the children's school and told them about climate change, and it got them all worried and actually really freaked out. So that night, they couldn't even eat dinner. They're at home trying to figure out what to do. So in the presence of climate change, I think this is the anxiety that many of our young people are facing. And so what we're attempting to do is to look at the solutions. And our solutions, I bet you can tell from the modules from Levi and Kyle too, and from this book, our solutions are place-based. They're based in the wisdom and the experience of our elders, families, ancestors who have come before us and who have prepared our islands to be islands of abundance. So without our funders and partners, this couldn't have happened. So I really want to thank, through DFAT, the Australia Aid, funding Australia Pacific Climate Partnership. And I will not try to do this German name, but I'll just say GIZ. I think you can see it. I think some of you are familiar with GIZ. And my research and art partner is Island Research and Education Initiative. And I represent the Center for Getting Things Started. So again, free downloads. And this is the team that put it together. So there are 5 books in the series. And we hope that we can produce more books. And they have been translated from English into Kiribati, Samoan, Tuvalu, Pidgin, Solomon Islands Pidgin, Bislama, Vanuatu Bislama. And book 5 has been translated into Marshallese. And also, thanks to the Marshallese College of Marshall Islands students, they actually have animated it, and there's a real animation. You can see the book being read. Quite exciting. So there are 5 titles. The first title is how I take care of myself and others. So again, we were trying to teach children about climate change, but instead of saying climate change, we know that as the climate changes, we need to do practices that support cooperation. Most of all, we have to have more and more and more teamwork, just like in the old days. We cannot face this threat together. So book one, level one is for the little children, like kindergarten, first, second grade. And so how I take care of myself and others. Books 2 and 3 go together. It's Welcome to Our Garden, and there's a family of 3 cousins. And the book, they show you how to garden, and I'll go through some of the details in a bit. And then Teamwork in My Community, as a way to respond to the climate changing, the children excite the community and form a group to start a community garden where the garden is a place to collect many, many varieties of fruits and vegetables to see which one will survive as the climate changes. And then books 4 and 5, books 2 and 3, you see level 2, slightly older children, yeah, maybe 3rd, 4th, 5th grade in America. So we're talking about maybe 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, yeah? And then the third, the books 4 and 5 is Our High Island Adventure and Our Atoll Adventure. This is a level 3 reading. So again, students with reading level, maybe 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds reading level. So those are our first 5 books in the series. So the first book, and I hope this is interactive, so please feel free to use the chat. Ian, I'm sure you can, oh, Ian, if I put this into slideshow mode, nobody can see anything. Sorry, I don't know how to do this on Zoom. Like if I put the whole screen, it goes blank. So anyway, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in chat. I'm sure Ian will be monitoring it. So as we go through the first few pages of how I take care of myself and others, do put into chat if you notice how we are focusing this book on prevention more than anything else, okay? So for example, how I take care of myself and others. I wake up on my own. I wake up my younger brother and sister. I put away the nets that keep us safe from mosquitoes while we sleep. So if some of you want to respond in the chat, what are we trying to prevent here? Or, oh, are they allowed to unmute and speak, Ian?
Right now it's just the chat, but I'll add that ability.
Okay. Or anyone, what are we trying to prevent here? Why the emphasis on, I put away the nets that keep us safe from mosquitoes while we sleep? Yes, for sure. Thank you, Kyle. As the climate is changing and as we are getting warmer and warmer, there are different patterns in our weather and in our rain. And places where, you know, there used to not be so much accumulation of water, now there is, or places where some places are getting drier and drier, some places getting wetter and wetter. And yes, mosquito-borne illness is going to be a challenge around climate change. And so for prevention, we want to encourage the use of using mosquito nets while we sleep. Then the next, another thing in the book, how we take care of ourselves and others, boiling the water that comes from a water tank before making the tea. So it's quite clear what we're preventing here. As you know, most of our communities still depend on water catchment or water from rivers. And as the conditions are changing, we need to use preventative measures to make sure water is safe to drink. So the first book is How I Take Care of Myself and Others. Oh, I see there's a Q&A. Oh, thank you. Now I have to look at two things. There's a chat and there's a Q&A. Yes, dengue and malaria. Thank you. Now I can see I have to open a couple of windows. Got it. Okay, the next two books. This is the one that has the most connection, I think, a lot of connections to climate resilient gardening and farming. It's Welcome to Our Garden and Teamwork in Our Community. So just again, just a few pages. And on these books, we are focusing on personal, home, and school practices. So again, just keeping it where it's relatable to the young children. And so the level 2 books, we focus on practices that you can do personally, practices that you can do at home, and even practices that you can do at school. So here's one. So the children are noticing as part of gardening, we notice that there are wet and dry seasons. Our elders show us that some plants need to be planted during the dry season and other plants during the rainy season. And we collect rainwater. So here we're showing how we have practices to collect rainwater. So what is this practice? And then really, why is this practice important? So those of you who may be living in low-lying atolls, or even those of us who are on high islands, but why is the practice of collecting water important? And if you want to or can, please drop a thought in the Q&A or in the chat. So that is a practice there. Another one, this is my favorite. We look at and touch the soil to make sure that it provides the nutrients our plants need. Our elders taught us to make compost, which helps to make the soil healthy and fertile. Instead of throwing away kitchen scraps, we save them. We layer the scraps between leaves and grass clippings to make compost. So again, what is this practice and why is it important? And I'm sure we can make connections with Kyle and Livai's modules, the whole practice of composting. And again, we try to show different ways that one may compost on our islands. You can just have a freestanding pile. You can have our 3-bin system, or if you want to, you can have even a plastic bin. So just different ways of composting. And then the children are adding the compost, the finished compost to the soil. Then this picture is from the Teamwork in My Community book. So the context of Teamwork in My Community book is that a climate change scientist came to the school and told the children about climate change, and it really terrifies them. When the more and more they hear about climate change, this is what they think about. They think about their beautiful garden just dying. And they wonder, do we have to change the way we plant the vegetables and fruit trees because the climate is changing? Will salt in the ground harm our root crops? We talk about salinization. Mireille, the little girl, she has a beautiful flower garden that she makes bouquets, and Marma and Lei, and she wonders if her flowers will not get enough water. And Lagi, he has a medicinal garden, and again, he wonders if they're going to survive. And so they decide to band together the community, and the community creates a community garden where they can plant different varieties of crops for resilience. So again, teamwork to implement the practices. Our next two books, we focus on island-wide adaptations. So adaptations, climate smart agriculture adaptations that can be implemented across larger areas. So for example, in our High Island adventure and in our Atoll adventure, the two cousins go to different ecosystems of the island. And in each ecosystem, they meet someone who is doing a climate smart practice or sustainability practice, and they learn from this person. So for example, here, they come across a woman working in a taro patch, and the farmer tells them and teaches them to mulch even more. And the farmer says, we may have different kinds of taro, but we have the same problem. The sea level is rising due to climate change and it's making the ground salty. Mulching with leaves and coconut fronds stops too much salt from building up on the soil. So the two cousins stay and help her mulch the taro patch. The next big island-wide adaptation as you go along the whole book. So I'm really excited about all of you downloading the free books and you can read it with the children. It's the end of the book. They come across an elder and he's collecting seeds and he raises these seeds into young trees. And the reason is because of deforestation. And so he explains that he raises these trees so that he can reforest. Another, again, adaptation or mitigation that we can do together. So this is the 2 pages from the High Island Adventure. And then they go to visit Samu on his atoll. And again, here on the atoll, Samu's mother shows how they have to collect water as a practice. And she's also growing taro right by the house. And then they also, as they explore the island, they come across women who are planting coconuts, and in between them in Hawaii, we call them now paka. Hidden, I think is the Marshallese name, as shore break. So again, island-wide adaptations that can be done, climate's resilient agriculture. So in the front of the books, dear audience, when you download it, please do also look at the front of the book. In the front of the book, there's some front matter that supports how you can use this book. It tells you that there's several parts and how the children can read the story by themselves or take turns to read it as a small group, or it can be read to them by someone. And then what's really also really important is the back matter. So in the back, the interactive prompts, where after reading, the children can gather and discuss, or maybe this question can be sent home with the children to discuss with their families. So for example, talk to an elder in your community about their observations of weather and climate. Have they noticed? So really getting the children intergenerational, interacting with the elders in the community so that they can learn and understand. And like Livai said, literally we plant the seeds in them while they are young. And then also there's some tips. So they can, tips for community projects like tree planting or energy conservation. So that's it for the books. I really hope, I'm gonna see if I can put it again in the chat. I hope that you are able to download these books. So I'll copy and paste one more time. Again, feel free to download these books. They're for free. If you want to print them out, you're welcome to, but if you wanted to show them to the children on an iPad or a computer, please feel free to, and please enjoy using these books. Thank you very much, Ian and Kyle and Livai. This is the end of my presentation about our climate change readers, where we talk about climate resilient farming with the children in the Pacific. And I don't know if there's time for questions, but back over to you, Ian. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ming-Wei. Yep, right now I'm not seeing any questions, so feel free to either use the Q&A feature or the chat is now enabled if you have questions for Ming-Wei, and we can loop back at the end. So if you need time to think of any questions, go ahead. Now I'm going to hand it over to Kyle. I think it transitions great. These climate modules are also very useful, and especially the last one focuses on case studies and examples of youth in agriculture. And so it relates really well to what Ming-Wei's presented on. So go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, thank you, Ming-Wei. I love the illustrations in there, and I love just the thought also into how you can use the modules. You know, that it's not just a book that somebody sits down and reads, but it's something that teachers, parents, all kinds of people can use together. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, so I'm just going to be talking about these climate resilient training modules. Can you guys see my screen okay? Yeah, Mingwei, Livai?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So just to start off, these were produced under the same program actually as Mingwei's publications. So through DFAT, Australian Aid, and the Australia Pacific Climate Partnership was a series of farmer training modules entitled Farmer's Guide to Climate Smart and Sustainable farming practices that are climatically, environmentally, and economically smart. And these modules were just released in August 2022. They're available digitally for free. I'll share the link after this. Great resources that we are now actively trying to get out into the community and to all the practitioners so that they can take good advantage of that. As Livai mentioned, none of this would have been possible without the late Dr. Andrew McGregor on the right-hand side of the photo. So Andrew passed away in December of 2022, just a few months after these publications were finalized. And we really want to honor Andrew by making sure that these resources get out there. Andrew had over 35 years of working in Pacific agriculture in almost every Pacific island. He was an incredible agriculture economist, a researcher, but he also really believed in making research and agriculture economics usable and accessible. He liked this word demystifying. You know, how do you take, like I think Mingwei was saying, this big concept of climate change and climate resilient? How do you make those big concepts really relatable, especially for the people that are most in need of this information, the farmers? So, you know, we had the opportunity, many of us, but especially Livai and I, to work under Andrew for about a decade and a half, and to glean from all of his experiences, and we're better off for it. So just want to take time to acknowledge Andrew here, and Kokosiga Pacific, the company that he founded, and we look forward to continuing to carry on that legacy. So there are 8 modules in this package, and the first one talks about what is the likely impact of climate change on agriculture in Fiji and the Pacific. You know, we can talk about temperatures increasing, drought, flood. What does this mean for farmers? And so it's really distilled down. It provides that kind of good introduction to what we can expect in our agriculture systems. There's a second module that talks about unsustainable and sustainable cropping practices, and lots of great examples there about what that really means in the context of the Pacific. There's a third module that talks about agroforestry cropping systems and how important they are in this climate resilient farming. Then number 4 talks about practices to conserve soil and protect from extreme events. This is very important in our fragile Pacific Islands, particularly as we're planting on slopey areas, and just the connections there with soil conservation, extreme drought, and then extreme rain events and flooding. So there's a lot of amazing practical information there. Number 5 is all about seeds and seedlings, how important the nursery is in climate resilient farming, being able to, you know, raise plants regardless of if it's too dry or too wet, too hot. The nursery provides that really important tool for farmers in climate resilient farming, as does the appropriate planting material. So there's a lot of talk about open pollinated varieties. So varieties that can be selected and kept that are adapted to our different locations, as opposed to just going to the store and buying some seeds that maybe are adapted to the conditions in Southeast Asia or New Zealand, but not necessarily adapted to your specific conditions. And then there's a whole module on making compost and different systems. And then the final one talks about sustainable farming systems as an economically viable enterprise. And Livai is going to talk a little bit about this, but how important it is to talk to farmers, not just about we don't just do these things to protect the environment, but we also do them to protect our bottom line. Farmers need to continue to make money, and you need to follow climate resilient farming practices, not just to protect the environment, but also to protect your business and your livelihood. So there were 10 authors altogether that contributed to these manuals, and they're all listed there. Quite a list of stars who brought their expertise on different areas, whether it's soils or coconuts or cropping systems, agroforestry. So a lot of wisdom captured into these modules. So basically, these modules, they talk about these practices, which, if adopted, will enable the farmers to provide sustainable livelihoods for their farmers, for their families now and into the future. And they focus on Fiji. Most of the examples are Fiji, but they're highly relevant to all the Pacific Islands. And there's an emphasis on the people who will implement these practices, so the farmers. So it's not written for academia or things. It's really targeted towards farmers and to be used by people who are helping farmers, so trainers. And the underlying message of all of these guides is that the cropping practices farmers use must take into account not only the present and future climate change, climate challenges and opportunities, but also the environment and the economic context. So these modules explain to farmers the rationale for adopting the practices. That's the why, and also the method for adopting the practices. That's the how. So we can't just sort of like say, hey, you should do this, but we need to explain why, what is the context. So the how and the why is really important. So just showing a couple of slides, the cover slides for some of the really cool modules that I like. Module number 4, they're talking about soil conservation and protecting from extreme events. And you can see the picture there is using vetiver grass on the contour to prevent soil erosion, and then planting on that same contour. In this case, it was with pineapples. So there's a number of really great practices there for soil conservation. And then the next one talks about unsustainable and sustainable cropping systems. And you can see in the picture there, there's the wonderful plant kava. And we've had so much hype talking about kava, and it's great that livelihoods in the Pacific are being improved because of kava. But we have a lot of examples of unsustainable kava practices. And this is clear cutting forests and planting mountains and mountains of kava. We know where this will lead us, because we have decades and decades of lessons from unsustainable monocultures here in the Pacific. And we don't want to take a traditional crop like kava and follow that same route, because history has already told us where it will lead to. But there's an alternative. This is sustainable cropping practices. And you can see there kava in a agroforestry system. So planted amongst banana and coconut and other fruit trees. And this is the kind of cropping system that has been used for generations. has proven to be resilient. And so we want to contrast, these sustainable and unsustainable farming practices. And, we're talking to farmers, but I think we're also talking to policymakers here who also like to use big numbers and oftentimes promoting monoculture because of the numbers that it shows us. But in the end, we know what it will lead us down. So just almost done here. I just want to share that these modules are supported by a whole lot of short videos, which mainly focus on implementing these practices. So as you're reading through the modules, there'll be these links for videos. And I encourage you to kind of follow these links. And they're kind of a mix of different video sources. But this is also speaking to the fact that we know that many farmers now are deriving their information from videos. And so we want to continue to respond and adapt our training materials to how people are really receiving them. So this is a cool added feature in these modules, is all of the links. So just quickly, and then I'm going to hand over to Livai to talk a little bit more about it, because he was directly involved in developing a lot of these and also in rolling out these training modules. But here we have the modules being launched in the island of Taveuni at Tutu Rural Training Center, and they've been incorporating them into their training of trainers program. Important to note that these really are meant to be used as a part of a hands-on training practices. This is not a classroom or an academic exercise, but instead you talk about a concept, look through the manual, maybe watch the video, and then you get out and talk about it. So you can see farmers walking through some protected cropping vegetable houses in Taveuni. An important part of climate resilient vegetable farming is being able to control the rain. And then on the other side, you see the A-frame, which is talked about in that module 4. A-frame is used to find the contour along the hillside so that you can control the flow of water, find out where you can plant so that we're not losing our soil and our crops in these big rains. And then there's many other partners, including Bula Agro Enterprise, who are using these modules in a range of settings, including with students and people who are looking to see what is an appropriate climate change adaptation strategy. And so I just want to hand over to Livai now to talk about what he thinks some of the important points are in these modules, and then most importantly, how people can use them. So thank you guys very much, and just want to again acknowledge all of the 10 authors who contributed, acknowledge DFAT for providing these kind of funding to be able to put these training materials together. And thanks for Ian and Ming for helping organize this.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. I think you said a lot there. I don't even know what to say now. Well, anyway, just like I was talking about yesterday to some friends, these modules are just like a bag of tools for farmers. It's been very well researched, very well documented, very well articulated. Farmers are not only trying to adapt and trying to improve the bottom line, they're also in the business of problem solving. And these books will act as like a reference when they do face problems back in their farms, whether you're in the village or you're in a remote community, you're in a coastal place, or you're up in the bush somewhere. You can always refer to these modules to try and find some solutions there. And like Kyle was saying, we back them up with videos, we back them up with solid data. I was telling them yesterday, one of my favorite modules is the module 8, the economics of it. We really don't talk about the numbers much, farmers in the Pacific, but it's so important that we really know numbers. This is in regards to gross margins, in regards to risk that's involved in investing in a farm. People think it's, you know, some people are really passionate about it, but for farmers like us who are commercial farmers, these would be a good reference point for you, especially if you're trying to crunch your numbers. And it's always good to understand the economics of it before investing in any crop that you want to invest in. So I'm really thankful, grateful. I'm always referring back to our late lead author, Andrew McGregor, who was an agricultural economist by profession. You know, he really forced us to collect all this data and make it relevant to farmers here in Fiji and the Pacific. One good example is we're trying to compare a sugarcane farmer out here in the West, comparing it to a farmer who is diversified into an agroforest. You know, we've collected this data for probably 7 years now. And, you know, you can just see the graph. The sugarcane farmer, his income is going up and down. And this farmer who has adopted the agroforestry sustainable practices is just a gradual exponential growth from year 1 right up to year 7. So, you know, that's really important information. People like the Fiji Sugar Corporation and all these big companies, they won't really show you these gross margins, because we are exposing the hidden costs, especially when it comes to sugarcane farming. The labor costs are very, very well, they're not really well documented, the labor input. So when you put the numbers together, you'll find out that it's the sugarcane farming is not really sustainable in the long term. And that's been backed up by reports like from the World Bank just several days ago. They've come out open to tell us, farmers in Fiji, especially sugarcane farmers, that the way we're heading, the farming industry is on a demise. So these are some things that we've highlighted, comparing sugarcane farmers to farmers who've adopted agroforestry concepts. We've also highlighted farmers who have adopted composting into their systems, especially farmers up in Taviuni who grow a lot of kava there, kava and taro. You know, we know we've got a lot of evidence that says that the yield of taro is going down. Before we were averaging about 1.9 to 2.5 kilos per com. Now it's going down to probably 700 to 900 grams per com. And the kava too, you know, we face this big issue on kava dieback. You know, climate change has brought all these problems. Apart from the weather, the climatic conditions, you know, you have El Nino and La Nina. We also have this an increase in a pest and disease infestation. And one big one is kava dieback. You know, you can have this huge plantation and you're already making calculations, you know, you're going to make a lot of money, and kava dieback, which is spread by insects, they just come in and just wipe out the whole plantation. And it's good to go back and use sustainable practices that our forefathers were using. Andrew mentions a lot of going back to the future. You know, we had started off as hunters and gatherers, then we moved on to traditional cropping practices, and then all of a sudden we were full into monocropping. Now the modules have sort of been telling us, you know, we have to go back to a traditional way of farming. And going back to what Ming was illustrating, you know, I love those illustrations. You know, we have to educate the kids nowadays. I think, you know, you can't teach old dogs new tricks. And kids would be my prime audience for these books, for these modules. They're a bit technical, but you know, when you come into the business of farming, you have to understand that there'll be a lot of technicalities involved. especially nowadays. So it's good to be well versed with it, to educate yourself, and even kids can understand these modules. The videos are self-explanatory. They're pretty much straightforward. You can relate it to what's happening in your community, in your backyard, or with farm organizations that you're working with. There's so much information out there. There's significant opportunity to take advantage of climate change as well. There's the story of breadfruit being the crop of the future. The history of breadfruit. It was taken over to the Caribbean to feed the slaves there back in the day, and because they couldn't supply the slaves with wheat and rice. So they came all the way to the Pacific to take breadfruit there. And if you go to the Caribbean now, I mean, if you go to Jamaica, you ask them what's your favorite, what's your traditional food there. They said it's salted fish and breadfruit. So in terms of food security, being resilient to these weather extremes, and you can convert the breadfruit into flour, and it's gluten-free. It just ticks all the boxes in terms of breadfruit being a carbon sequencer. Andrew talks about the biomass of the leaves. It's bigger than your ordinary tea crop. So it's one of those plants that has been historically, it's been grown traditionally to feed our communities. They say one breadfruit tree can feed a village. So as climate change provides these major problems and issues, it also provides these opportunities for farmers here in the Pacific to adapt to it. And breadfruit is one of these crops that will constantly be pushing for people to plant, not only here in the Pacific but all around the world. And as Kyle was mentioning, all these modules does have a place for us here in the Pacific. If you're a farmer or a new farmer trying to invest in any crop, especially now, there's so much variables. The weather, the price of fertilizer, the labor shortage, even the cost of labor has gone up. We have to understand all these issues before we even venture into farming, and that's what Module 8 talks about. It just gives you credible numbers. It's just like a farm management manual that's been upgraded. You look at all these farm management manuals that we have, it's just like cut paste all these years. But now we really have good data, and we've been able to present it in a way for farmers who haven't even been through farmer training or been educated in farming concepts. They can understand straight away. So I think that's the gist of it. And apart from that, the underlying current is to get these modules out. We have to get these modules out. They have to go out to schools. They have to go out to farmer organizations, so farmers can have access to them. We have to also run them out to all these Ministry of Agriculture extension offices. They need to use these modules as reference points. And like I said, they've got videos that you can just click onto, and to just validate a lot of the stuff that we're doing. We didn't pull these numbers from the sky, or we didn't get it from a lot of literature survey that we're doing. We actually got all this data from ongoing research. That's the beauty about all this. They've been backed up by scientists that have conducted formal trials on various farms here in Fiji and the Pacific, and we know that it will be a useful tool that farmers can use not only now and in the future. A lot of the language that we're using now people may not comprehend now that, we're just getting into the mode of climate change, but definitely 10 years time, 20 years time, people will be coming back to these models to reflect on, and they'll definitely be saying, man, these people were talking about these issues back in the day, and people were not listening. So I think it's a good time to download these models and try to spread them, and make sure that everybody out there who has an interest in farming as a business, and also people who want to work with climatologists in trying to just decrease the impacts of climate change in our communities. This is a real good tool for them. I think I've said too much. Thank you very much.
Good job, Livai. Right on.
Thanks, Levi. Yeah, that's great. I think the main thing is not only are these resources accessible, but like you said, they're easy to implement even for children and teachers to use, all the way to experienced farmers. So it's got something in there, especially with those videos for everyone. So it's great to hear more about it. Thank you. Right now, I invite anyone to unmute themselves. Everyone should have the access to talk. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat, but also would love to hear them.
Yeah, and I just want to add too that we're fully committed to rolling out these modules. We're going to be coming back to DFAT with some discussions about printing them, maybe either centrally or in some specific countries, and then looking to partner with organizations who want to use them to roll out some awareness and trainings. So if you've got some ideas, please feel free to reach out to us at Pacific Farmer Organizations, and we'd love to partner with you to see how we can actually get these in use with the farmers who they're intended for.
Kyle and Levi and Ian, if I may say something, I think one of our audience members noticed that in the children's book, we were very intentional about being inclusive. We have some of our main characters. I think you can see Kiana, he has only one arm, and I don't know if it came through, but in the High Island book and Low Atoll book, Sarah, has a crutch. She only has the use of one leg. Something that has continuously come up in recent years is around farming, is how to be more inclusive of people with physical disabilities or whatever disabilities, and also for some areas to be gender aware, that for many of our cultures and traditions, the women farm certain crops. In some communities, only the women are allowed in the taro patch. Men cannot go in. And other communities is the opposite. So just being also very aware to include such suggestions or tips as we move forward in our work. Just want to make a comment, and also I noticed one of our audience members pointed it out. So thank you all very much for this wonderful modules.
Yeah, cool. And Ian, I want to just encourage you as well, like the Knowledge Management Fair, there were just so many publications. So I hope that we can find some more time to spotlight or highlight some of these publications, because there are a lot of people who are now venturing into, helping farmers adapt to climate change through farming and agriculture. And so we just want to make sure that all of the resources that are already produced are accessible and people kind of know how to use them. So we look forward to being able to showcase and highlight more of these. I see my colleagues from from PoetCom are on the webinar as well. I think there were some really great organic training materials there. A lot of talk about organics, but we need the practical tools and the guides to be able to help people do it and do it in an economically viable way. As Livai said, you know, we're not doing this just to protect the environment, but we're doing it to protect the livelihoods of our families. So I hope that we can see more of these, Ian, in the coming months, and get more authors out here talking about their books and how they intended to use them. I learned a lot just from Ming Wei, just showing, you know, what was the intention behind these books. It really brings them to life. So thanks for that, Ming Wei.
Thank you everyone for attending today. The resources, you can find them. We've dropped the links a couple of times at Center for Getting Things Started website, and then also on the People on Resources tab on the website. And then if you missed the Knowledge Management Fair, these resources were a part of this larger pool from farm organizations and all other entities that were submitted into the fair. So send us an email if you want that link. It's a catalog of all the submissions, including these. So thanks again for attending. Thank you to our panelists. I think we learned a lot, and hope everyone has a good rest of their day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining in.
everyone.
Thanks, Ming Wei.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
thanks, Livai.
Mahalo.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Vinaka.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. It was great.
Thank you. Thank you, DFAT.
Karnes, there's a Marshallese version if you can get to it, I promise.